There are only two absolute betrayals in life, my Arctic survival instructor once told me. First is when your diving partner cuts your safety line. Second is when the woman you love cuts you to the core. Back then, training in the ice cold waters of the practice range, I just smirked. Now, returning from a 3-month Arctic expedition, those words echoed in my mind as I stared at my phone screen, reading a message from my son. Dad, something's happening at the school. Come quickly. The Coast Guard helicopter was descending through the damp autumn fog. Looking down at the familiar coastline, I remembered how I first saw these shores 15 years ago. Fresh out of a decade with an elite rescue diving unit, I decided to open a diving school here. Not just a business, a place where we train professionals capable of saving lives underwater. Sarah supported me back then. She always knew exactly what to say. You're not the type to retire and grow tomatoes in a garden. You need action, need to pass on your experience. And I'll be right beside you, I promise. She kept her word, became one of the school's best instructors. We conducted dives together, taught newcomers together, shared in their successes together. And now, welcome back, Commander. Mike Turner, my deputy, greeted me on the landing pad. A sturdy 40-something with weathered features and a complex past in Navy SEALs. A man I trust to watch my back at 150 feet down. Something flickered in his eyes as he shook my hand. While you were gone, a lot has happened. I knew that look. It's the look people get when they don't want to be the bearer of bad news. In 15 years of rescue service, I'd seen that look plenty, usually before news about fallen comrades. But this was different, something personal. Out with it, I tossed my backpack into the service SUV, feeling anxiety building inside. What's wrong with the school? What about Tommy? You see, he hesitated, fidgeting with his keys. That habit revealed his past. When nervous, he always needed something in his hands, as if checking readiness for action. Your wife and Jack, that started something. The school isn't exactly a school anymore. Actually, it's not a school at all. Jack. That name hit me like a punch to the gut. My old friend from basic training. The man I trusted to run the school during my expedition. The same partner I'd shared my last breath with at 120 feet when both our regulators malfunctioned. We survived then only because we acted as one, trusting each other completely. Tell me everything. My voice shifted to that command tone that demanded obedience even in stormy seas. Don't skip any details. Turner spoke, and I felt my fingers going numb on the armrest. The story unfolded like a textbook case of betrayal. My diving school, my legacy, my way of staying in service, even after retirement, had become a front for smugglers. It started with small favors, guiding boats past customs, using training dives for special cargo. Then came new investors with deep pockets and darker histories. Equipment for underwater operations was purchased under the guise of school modernization. The old sea caves where we conducted training dives became transfer points, and my reputation, my record as an impeccable officer, became the perfect cover. We're talking 7 figures here. Turner spoke quietly, like during a briefing before a complex operation. I tried digging, but it's all locked down. Local law enforcement is in on it, customs is bought off, and the worst part, he fell silent, clearly struggling to say what mattered most. Finish it. I already knew what I'd hear, but needed to hear it. Looks like Sarah was in on it from the start. Even before you left for the expedition, she and Jack. They're not just business partners. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. The Harbor View restaurant, our special place where Sarah and I celebrated our anniversary every year. There she was in that blue dress I'd brought her from Italy. Jack's hand rested on her shoulder with an intimacy that spoke volumes. And her look, the same way she used to look at me. I stared at the photo while an Arctic cold spread inside me, the kind that burns worse than any flame. 15 years of marriage, 3 kids raised together, thousands of shared dives. We were one of the best instructor teams on the coast. All these years, she taught beginners the primary rule of diving: never abandon your partner. And all this time. What about Tommy? I asked about what mattered most, what had been gnawing at me since receiving his message. He accidentally found their catch during a training dive. Some containers in the old caves. Smart kid knew something wasn't right. Tried to reach you. Reach me. In the Arctic, where we were testing new rescue equipment, we only had emergency, official communications, and my son was trying to get through to his father, watching everything he believed in crumble. A 15-year-old kid, passionate about diving, for whom the school was a second home and the instructors a second family. Give me the phone. I dialed my son's number, but Sarah answered. Honey, you're back already? We were just. Her voice rang false sweet with that haunting tone she used when hiding something. Before, it was small things, an expensive dress bought in secret or a surprise for a special occasion. But now, where's Tommy? At school training. You know how he spends all his free time there now, so dedicated, just like you. Don't. I cut her off with that eerily calm voice I used for giving orders in critical situations. Don't talk about him. I'm heading to the school. Sweetheart, maybe come home first. I'll make your favorite. She trailed off, apparently understanding from my silence that the game was over. I hung up. The cold inside gave way to fury, the kind that helps you survive in freezing water when all your equipment has failed and you're left with nothing but willpower and professional skills. I'd need both those qualities now. To the school, I commanded Turner. And tell me everything on the way. Absolutely everything. Every detail, every name, every little thing. Because it looks like it's time for a major cleanup. The SUV roared to life, carrying me toward the place where I'd have to make the most difficult dive of my life. Not into ocean depths, but into the abyss of betrayal. And in this dive, decompression sickness would be the least of my worries. The school building loomed ahead, a two-story complex of glass and concrete, built with money earned through years of honest service. My pride, my legacy, which I'd wanted to pass on to my son. Now this place had become a symbol of betrayal, but not forever, because there are things a military rescue diver never forgives. Betrayal of a partner and using their expertise to harm others. Prepare for descent. I muttered the old instructor's saying under my breath. It's going to be long and very, very deep. Water always washes away lies. Years of diving had taught me that. At depth, you can't pretend. Every movement reveals a person's true nature. Through the huge panoramic windows of the training pool, I watched my son practicing rescue maneuvers for drowning victims. His movements were precise, measured, a true professional despite his young age. At 15, he'd already surpassed many adult trainees, and now this dirty business threatened to destroy not just his dream, but his faith in people. Dad. Tommy climbed out of the pool, dropping his tanks. His eyes held a mix of joy and anxiety. I knew you'd come back early. I saw everything, Dad. Got it all on the underwater camera. I hugged my son, feeling the tension in his shoulders. Still just a kid, but holding himself like a man. My pride, my continuation, and my main reason for proceeding cautiously, despite the urge to immediately start the major cleanup. Let's go to my office. I nodded to Turner, who hovered by the entrance like a silent shadow. Show me what you found. The office greeted me with the familiar smell of neoprene and sea salt. The same photos on the walls, my rescue team, the school's first graduates, joint dives with Sarah. A new laptop sat on the desk, clearly not the kind you buy on an instructor's honest salary. Here, Tommy pulled out a flash drive hidden in a watertight mask container. I found this by accident 2 weeks ago. We were training with the group in the North Cave system, practicing narrow tunnel navigation, and I noticed something weird reflecting in a side passage. The video quality wasn't great. Underwater footage in murky cave water never is. But the main details were clear. Rows of containers disguised as old equipment, professional arrangement, quick-release mounting points, markers for navigation in darkness. I didn't understand what it was at first. My son's voice trembled with contained emotion. Decided to show Mom. And she said they were old training props. But I'm not stupid, Dad. I saw boats coming at night. Saw Jack conducting some special training with people I didn't know. Then these new instructors showed up, all jumpy tattooed, not like regular divers. Ex-SEALs, Turner added quietly. Mercenaries. I checked through my channels, all with combat experience. Underwater demolition specialists. I scrolled through the files on the flash drive, feeling cold rage building inside. Photos, equipment supply data, dive schedules. My 15-year-old son had conducted a real investigation, risking his life. Mom's changed. Tommy stared at the floor, clenching his fists. Became like a stranger. Always talking about money, about how we'll live better now. And when I asked about you, she said you were too rigid, stuck in the past with your principles. They're planning something big. Turner approached the bay map on the wall. This past week, they brought in new equipment, installed additional compressors, and their talk about some important client. I opened the last file, video from the restaurant. Sarah and Jack sat at a corner table, oblivious to everything around them. Their hands intertwined on the table, heads close together. Then she kissed him, casually, naturally, like someone she'd been intimate with for a long time. I'm sorry, Dad. Tommy put his hand on my shoulder. I had to show you the truth. I stared at the screen while memories flooded back. Sarah's and my first dive together, her excitement about the underwater world, her determination to become a professional. I want to be worthy of you, she'd said then. Want us to be a real team. Commander, Turner's voice brought me back to reality. What's the play? I've got connections in the Coast Guard, could arrange a surprise inspection. No, I shook my head. This is family business. First, I need to talk to my wife. Give her a chance to explain. Dad, you don't think she'll. Tommy broke off, seeing my expression. Go change. I squeezed his shoulder. You'll stay at Turner's tonight. And tomorrow, everything gets settled. After Tommy left, I pulled an old folder from the safe. School documents, contracts, licenses. Everything in my name. The one precaution I'd insisted on 15 years ago. This is your baby, Sarah had said then. Your dream and your responsibility. Commander. Turner lingered by the door. Maybe you shouldn't go alone. These guys aren't playing with fishing rods. Remember our first rule. I checked the documents in the folder. Never abandon your partner, even if they've betrayed you. Talk to them first. Maybe they had a reason. I dialed my wife's number. The rings seemed endless, stretching like water at depth. Finally, she answered, her voice trembling slightly, betraying tension. We need to talk, I said calmly. Come to the old lake house. Remember that place where we prepared for our first dives? 1 hour. Honey, wouldn't it be better at home? I'll make dinner, we can quietly. The lake house, Sarah. Just us. Like old times. She paused for a second. Okay, 1 hour. I hung up and looked at the photo on the wall, our first class of instructors. Young, happy faces. Sarah in the center, proudly displaying her certificate. Back then, everything was real. Or did it just seem that way? Turner. I turned to my friend. Stay on standby. If I don't call in 2 hours, act according to circumstances. And watch over my son. Yes, Commander. He saluted out of old Navy habit. Just watch yourself. Something about this meeting doesn't sit right. I went down to the locker room where I changed after dives for so many years. My old dive knife still lay in my locker, a talisman that had seen me through every rescue operation. I slipped it into my jacket pocket, not for threats, for confidence. Prepare for descent, I muttered, starting the car. Check equipment, calculate depth, monitor air supply. And most importantly, be ready for any currents. The road to the lake wound through pine trees, climbing higher into the mountains. Here's where Sarah and I started, where we trained our first students, where we dreamed about the school's future. And here, I'd have to put a period, or an ellipsis, to our story. The old lake house appeared around the bend, a 2-story wooden structure with a boat dock and equipment shed. How many joyful moments this place held. Students' first successes, evenings around the fire pit, plans for the future. I killed the engine and checked my watch. 10 minutes until the meeting. A gust of wind carried the scent of cigarette smoke. Someone had been smoking on the dock recently. Sarah never smoked, so she hadn't come alone. Well, I should have expected that. Jack always liked insurance. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to Tommy. Remember the diver's cardinal rule: never dive alone. Always have a plan, and believe in the best even when the water's murky. Footsteps echoed from the house. Time to start the most difficult dive of my life. The old lake house greeted me with creaking floorboards and the stench of betrayal, a mix of Sarah's expensive perfume and Jack's cigarette smoke. 15 years ago, the three of us sat here by the fireplace, dreaming about the school's future. Sarah spread blueprints for future classrooms on the floor. Jack suggested ideas for organizing dives, and I believed I was building something important, something lasting, something that would outlive me. Now they waited in the same living room, she nervously drumming her fingers on the armchair, he lounging on the couch like he owned the place. Papers smoldered in the fireplace, covering their tracks. Through the huge windows overlooking the lake, I could see a moored speedboat. New, definitely not the kind you'd buy on an instructor's salary. Darling. Sarah jumped up, tried to hug me, but I stepped back. Fear flickered in her eyes. She knew this look. It's how I looked at traders in the unit when I was still serving. And she remembered those stories. She'd asked to hear about my service, about how honor mattered in our profession. Sit down. My voice was deceptively calm. Let's talk. About the school. About the containers in the caves. About how you're using my name to cover your smuggling operation. Come on, old friend, Jack smirked, lighting another cigarette. His gesture, the way he flicked ash onto the hardwood floor, showed utter contempt for this place, for our shared memories. You didn't really think you could make serious money running honest dives. Times have changed. These days, you either seize opportunities or rot in poverty. I looked at him, trying to see the Jack I once knew. The top graduate from BUD/S, the man who'd been through dozens of high-risk operations with me. The one who swore that a diver's honor wasn't just empty words. But before me sat a different man, with a manicured face, expensive watch, and the dead eyes of a career opportunist. Opportunities? I sat across from them, feeling the nice handle cooling my side through the jacket pocket. You call betrayal an opportunity. Using the school for criminal operations. God, Andrew. Sarah threw up her hands. A new bracelet glinted on her wrist, the same one I'd seen in photos of their secret meetings. Such dramatic words. Betrayal, crimes. We're just helping people move cargo. Nobody gets hurt. Everyone wins. Everyone? I looked at the photo on the wall, our first graduating class of instructors. Young, happy faces. Sarah in the center, clutching her certificate like the greatest treasure. What about those kids we trained? Those who believed in our school? They get paid. Jack stood up, walked to the bar, pulled out a bottle of whiskey, my favorite, which I'd been saving for special occasions. Good money. And those who want more, well, they're taken care of too. He meant the mercenaries, former SEALs he recruited for underwater operations, professionals who sold their skills for big money, traders just like him. And Tommy, I spoke my son's name, and Sarah flinched. Did you think about him? About how this affects his life? The boy will grow up, she looked away. He'll understand that what matters in life is security, not your endless talk about honor. Jack suddenly tensed, his gaze hardening. Let's cut to the chase, Commander. You think all that new equipment came free? The modern compressors, the decompression chamber, all that costs money you can't make playing by the rules. You know how much it costs to run a school like this? The licenses, inspections, greasing palms. So that's how it is. I rose slowly. Every muscle taut from tension. Years of training don't fade. Decided to sell my name, my reputation, what I earned with blood. Sit down. Jack stood too, and his voice took on familiar command tones, the same ones they taught in SEAL training. Sit down and listen. We've got a major deal going down today. A very important one. You can get your cut if you're in. Or, what happened next was lightning fast. I lunged forward, aiming for his jaw, but Jack seemed to expect it. Dodge, block, fluid movement. His elbow slammed in my solar plexus. The air rushed from my lungs. "Don't be stupid, Commander," he smirked, evading my next strike. His movements mirrored my own training, years of joint exercises showing through. Forgot who was best in hand-to-hand. Top of our BD/S class. I tried to reach him, but he read every move in advance. SEAL training, years of practice, all working against me now. Or maybe it was just the months in the Arctic, fatigue, and the moral exhaustion from betrayal. "Sarah, start the boat," he shouted, blocking my punch. "Time's running out." From the corner of my eye, I saw her dash to the exit, snatching up some folder of documents. Then his fist connected with my jaw, and the world exploded in pain. "Sorry, old friend." I heard his voice as if through cotton. There was even something like regret in it. "But you're too proper for our times. Too honest." The final blow sent me into deep darkness. Before blacking out, I caught a glimpse of them hurrying to the boat, rushed, nervous, like people late for an important meeting. And I heard Sarah's voice. "We need to hurry. The client won't wait. This kind of chance comes once in a lifetime." I came to from the cold, lying on the floor while the evening breeze blew in through the open door from the lake. My temples throbbed, jaw burning like fire. The clock showed I'd been out for about an hour. Outside, dusk was settling in, the time we usually conducted night training dives with students. Struggling to my feet, I made it to the fireplace. Among the burned papers, one charred edge caught my attention. Coordinates, time, and a sum with 6 zeros. Deal of the century. That's what they planned. Something so big it was worth betraying everything. Friendship, family, honor. My phone was under the couch. Must have fallen during the fight. Need to call Turner, warn Tommy. They'll need my help, my experience in these waters. Because their plan, however perfect, had one major flaw. They didn't know all the currents in the bay. Didn't know the secrets I'd kept for emergencies. "You were right, Jack," I muttered, heading for my car. "I am too proper. And that's exactly why I won't let you use my school for your dirty business." The engine started first try, as if the car sensed the urgency. 15 miles to town, where my son and loyal friend waited. 15 miles to devise a plan. Because somewhere in the night, a deal was being prepared that was supposed to be the trader's ticket to a new life. "Prepare for descent," I whispered the old instructor's saying, hitting the gas. "It's going to be very deep. And very dangerous. Just the kind we used to love. Right, Jack?" The headlights cut through darkness along the familiar road. Somewhere out there, in the night-dark bay, 2 traders were preparing for the biggest deal of their lives. They calculated everything. Time, place, operation details. But they forgot the primary rule of diving. You never know what awaits you in the depths, especially when your former commander knows those depths. North marker, depth 120, current northwest. Turner's voice came crisp and professional through the earpiece. Their boat just passed the checkpoint. 2 minutes to operation start. I checked my gear one final time. Years of service had ingrained meticulous thoroughness. The wetsuit fit like second skin. Tanks charged to maximum, and on my belt, the familiar cold touch of my knife. The same one that had seen me through every rescue operation. "I see them," whispered Tommy, watching through night vision from our boat's bridge. "Meeting a large yacht by the old lighthouse. Exactly where you predicted, Dad." I nodded. This transfer point was an obvious choice. Deep water, radar blind spot from the Coast Guard, and most importantly, a system of underwater currents only locals knew, or thought they knew. "Strike team ready," Turner reported. "Awaiting your signal. But are you sure you won't go in alone? We can send backup." "No," I fastened the final straps. "This is personal. Besides, they're expecting a team, but not a solo diver." Tommy looked away from the observation equipment. "Dad, be careful. Uncle Jack, he's still an excellent diver." "I know, son." I touched his shoulder. But he forgot the primary rule of diving. Never betray your partner. Never. The water embraced me, cold and dark as betrayal itself. 120 feet down, visibility no more than 15 feet, and somewhere below, Jack was preparing to receive containers from the client's yacht. I moved silently, using the current to my advantage. 15 years of instructor experience, dozens of rescue operations, all working for me now. My dive light caught the first container, slowly descending on a cable from the yacht. That's when I saw him. Jack in full gear, receiving cargo, signaling upward. His movements were precise, measured, still my school's best graduate. But now those skills worked against the law, against everything we taught him. I waited until he secured the cable to the container. The attack moment had to be perfect. At this depth, mistakes aren't an option. His light swept through the water, momentarily blinding me, but I was ready. The first strike caught him off guard. He clearly wasn't expecting another diver at this depth. But Jack wasn't our school's best graduate for nothing. His reaction was instant. Dodge, pivot, and drive an elbow into my ribs. Even through the wetsuit, the blow sent sharp pain through me. In the dim light of our dive lamps, I could see his eyes behind his mask, cold, calculating, professional. We spiraled in a deadly dance among the containers. Every move could be the last. At this depth, you can't afford mistakes. One wrong hit could knock out a regulator. One misplaced movement could tear a wetsuit. And below, in the blackness, the current I alone knew about was waiting. I just needed to force him to move in the right direction. Jack was clearly in better shape. His strikes were precise, measured, as if he was remembering all our joint training sessions. His dive knife flashed silver lightning, and I barely managed to dodge. He was pushing me back, cornering me between containers, confident in his superiority. And I let him believe it. Took a hit, then another. Feigned panic, started what looked like a disorganized retreat. Deeper and deeper, further from the yacht, toward where the cold current rose from the abyss, creating an underwater river capable of sweeping away even an experienced diver. "Give it up, Commander." His voice through the regulator sounded distorted but triumphant. "You're too old for these games." His knife finally found its mark, slashed across my side, leaving a long cut. Cold water instantly penetrated the suit, but I just smirked. Everything was going according to plan. Blood in the water. That's exactly what I needed. Right here, right now. That's when he felt it. The current, sudden and powerful, caught us both. His eyes widened behind his masked glass. He realized he'd fallen into a trap. He lunged for the line, but I was ready. One strike, right to the solar plexus. His grip loosened. Second strike, and his knife was in my hand. "Who's too old, Jack?" I slashed his forearm, watching blood spread in weird patterns through the water. "Remember what I taught you? Never underestimate old instructors, especially ones who know every rock in this bay." The current was carrying us further from the yacht. I saw panic in his eyes. He realized this was the end of the operation, that help wasn't coming. And then they appeared. Sharks. 3 bull sharks, attracted by the blood and our struggle. In our dive lights, their silhouettes looked like blurred shadows from a nightmare. I knew they'd come. In this spot, this time of year, they always rose from the deep to hunt. With a few kicks, I reached the familiar grotto, a small crevice in the underwater cliff that only I knew about, a place to wait out any storm. But Jack panicked. Instead of staying still, he shot upward, trying to escape the predators. Rookie mistake. Sudden movement only drew their attention. I watched it like slow motion. The first shark banking into a turn, its body flexing into a lightning strike, Jack desperately reaching for his signal flare. The water around him turned crimson. Even through the water's mass, I heard his scream, not through the regulator, but that primal howl of terror that rises from the deepest part of the soul. The second shark came in from the right, the third from the left. Perfect hunting tactics, refined by millions of years of evolution. From my shelter, I watched this horrific scene with the cold professionalism of someone who's seen death in all its forms. No pity, just understanding that this is how traitors end. Fins flashed in the murky water, shark bellies gleamed white, and the current carried red swirls further out to sea, like a final salute to a man who forgot the primary rule of diving: never betray your partner. The radio in my mask crackled with Turner's voice. Commander, the yacht's trying to run. Take them down. Take them. I pressed my hand against my wound. Take them all, and tell the Coast Guard to ready your boats. Ascending with proper decompression stops, even now, I couldn't allow myself to break diving protocols. I thought about life's twists, how things come full circle. Jack and I started together, learned to dive, to save lives. Now the ocean depths had claimed him, not as a hero, but as a traitor. When I climbed aboard our boat, the operation was already wrapping up. Coast Guard had blocked the yacht. The strike team was leading people out in handcuffs, and Sarah sat on their speedboat's deck, staring into space. In her eyes was the understanding that she lost everything: husband, lover, future. Dad, Tommy rushed to help me remove my gear. You're hurt. Just a scratch. I winced, feeling my side starting to burn. Had worse. The sharks? Turner asked quietly, handing me the first aid kit. I nodded, looking at the dark bay water. Somewhere down there, at 120 feet, was the man I once called friend. A man who forgot the primary rule: a diver's honor is worth more than any money. You know, Tommy helped dress my wound, his hands moving confidently, like an adult's. I understand now why you always said that what matters in our business isn't skills, but principles. Yes, son, I put my hand on his shoulder. Because when you're at depth, when there's nothing but darkness and cold water around you, principles are the only thing keeping you on the right course. Dawn was breaking over the bay, painting the water blood red. The city lights flickered on the horizon, and seagulls circled overhead, welcoming the new day. A day that had forever changed our school, our family, our life. But I knew we'd manage, because there are things more important than money and success: honor, loyalty, and a father's love for his son, which is stronger than any betrayal. The prison hospital reeked of chlorine and despair. I sat across from Sarah, studying her gaunt face, lifeless eyes, and the gray streaks in her once luxuriant hair. The stump below her right ankle was hidden under the hospital blanket, a grotesque reminder of the night her world finally collapsed. I remembered that moment in vivid detail. Sarah, cornered on the yacht's deck, wearing that designer dress bought with smuggling money, her eyes darting between the approaching federal agents and the dark water, while her perfect makeup ran with spray and tears. Far easy. Hands behind your head. The agents shouted, but she already made her decision. In the spotlight beams, her figure looked surreally beautiful. Even then, she remained that striking woman who was used to being the center of attention. Expensive stilettos, perfect hair, $1,000 manicure. Everything she betrayed her family for. What cruel irony! Those stilettos, symbols of her hunger for luxury living, played the fatal role in her fall. She jumped, aiming for the dark water, but her heel caught on the lifeline. A short scream of terror was drowned by the roar of engines. The client's yacht was trying to escape pursuit, and its propellers were just starting to turn. Spray, screams, blood in the water. And that horrible sound, bones crushing under merciless propeller blades. When they pulled her out, nothing remained of her perfect socialite image. The couture dress had become bloody rags. The jewelry she'd been so proud of was lost to the dark waters. And her right foot. The doctors later said she was lucky, a few inches higher, and there would have been no chance of survival. I remember how she screamed in the ambulance, not from pain. The painkillers were already working, but from realizing she'd never wear those stilettos again that started it all. Never walk with that special gait that drove men crazy. Never be the star of social gatherings she dreamed about. Her first words in the hospital weren't, "I'm sorry," or "How's Tommy?" She asked, "How will I wear heels now?" That question contained everything: the emptiness of her soul, all her twisted priorities. And later, when they told her the prosthetic wouldn't accommodate high heels, she cried for 3 days, refusing food and medicine. Now, looking at her haggard face in the prison hospital, I saw how this injury had changed her, not just physically. The polished beauty who dreamed of yachts and designer clothes had become a faded shadow, learning to move on crutches. Her hands, once adorned with expensive bracelets, were calloused from the crutches, and in her eyes appeared something that wasn't there before, understanding the true price of vanity. Tommy asked about you. I placed an envelope with photos on the nightstand. Wants to know why you did it. She turned to the window, where the gray sky pressed against the bars with its hopelessness. 15 years. They gave me 15 years. Now I'll have plenty of time to think about reasons. Were there any of those reasons? I pulled out an old photo, the three of us at the school's opening, happy, full of hope. Were they worth all this? Tears rolled down her cheeks. Poor Jack. Now his bones lie somewhere on the bottom. Tommy will never call me mom again, and I can't even walk normally. All for money we never got. No, I shook my head. Not for money. For betrayal. There's never enough money, Sarah. But honor, you only get one. Just like family. On her bedside table stood a photo of Tommy, an old one from his first dive. The 15-year-old boy in his mask smiled so sincerely, so trustingly. That smile was gone now, perhaps forever. He got into the academy. I stood up, feeling the conversation drawing to a close. Going to be a Navy rescue diver. Says he wants to prove the Thompson name still means something in the profession. How's the school? She raised her eyes to me for the first time. Operating. Turner and I brought in new instructors. Changed the name to Diver's Honor. You know, after that incident, applications tripled. They say if the school survived such betrayal, they must be teaching something truly important there. I placed another envelope on the table. Here's divorce papers and termination of parental rights. The lawyer said it'll help with sentencing. Andrew. She tried to catch my hand, but I stepped back. You know what's the worst part? I paused at the door. Not the betrayal. Not the stolen money. Not even Jack's death. The worst is when Tommy asked, Dad, did Mom always lie to us? Or was there a time when she really loved us? I didn't know what to answer. Do you? Her sobs echoed off the ward walls as I walked out. In the corridor waited the escort, two stern officers with handcuffs. In an hour, she was to be transferred to a maximum security women's prison. I stepped outside into a light drizzle. Turner waited in the car, reviewing new trainee documents. How is she? He asked without looking up. Like someone who lost everything, I started the engine. Then again, she chose this path. The road wound along the coast. There, through the gray rain curtain, our school's outline was visible. A new flag flew on the pole with the emblem, a diving helmet and the words, Honor above all. You know, Turner set aside the papers. I was thinking, maybe in 15 years when she gets out. No, I shook my head. Some things can't be fixed. You can't glue broken trust back together, especially when the shards cut too deep. Ahead loomed the academy building where Tommy studied. My son, who despite everything decided to continue the family business. Not for money, not for glory, for that same honor his mother betrayed. Let's go, I accelerated. Tommy has his first night dive today. Need to make it to the start. The rain intensified, turning the world into a blurred watercolor. Somewhere there in the prison hospital, the woman I once loved mourned her ruined life. And I thought about how our children pay the highest price for their parents' sins, and how some lessons are too heavy, even if they make us stronger.